Therefore, I must clear my confusions and clear all the afflictive emotions, all the obscurations. And to achieve the perfect and complete enlightened state. If we can achieve that enlightened state, then we will be able to be greatest help, benefit to each and every sentient beings. In the most effective way, skillful means, spontaneously, effortlessly. Therefore, I'm going to try all my best throughout my life as much as possible to actualize and develop the cause and conditions that lead to that fully enlightened state. Such as by engaging in practice such as 6 perfections. And in order to practice those bodhisattvas path and practices such as 6 perfections, I must be encouraged, inspired, and reminded all the time. For that very reason, that is why we have come here together. And once we have been reminded that we try to apply as much as possible in our everyday life. Even though we might not be able to apply all of them immediately, but at least we try to apply some of them now, and slowly, trying to apply more and more of those practices. Okay, so then, facing bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soge chonam la chanchu pato dane kyabla lagi choche beso anam dola penje sangye do. So yesterday, from the 6th perfection, we discussed the first 3 practice of the perfections. The practice of the perfection of generosity, moral discipline, or ethical discipline. And we discussed a little bit on patience. So I guess maybe I might want to, again, talk a little bit on that as well. Because I guess that seems to be, one of the bigger issue for a lot of us, impatience, or not having enough patience. And because when we are impatient, then, it leads to frustrations and anger easily. And when we have, frustrations and anger, as I mentioned yesterday, then it kind of damage the good heart, the loving kindness, compassion, the bodhicitta mind. And thereby diluting our bodhisattva practice and path. So yesterday we spoke about one particular way of reflecting, contemplating, meditating, that as Shantideva explained, how to differentiate the person's behavior and person itself, and through that being patient with the persons, and not being upset and angry with that persons. So we discussed that yesterday. And in many of the mind training lojong and Lambrim, which is inspired from the Shantidevas, also in relation to that same practice, they give a good example, and I think that example can be beneficial for us to utilize that example. They say, if someone is having some mental issue, and if there is nurse, assistant, doctor who is trying to treat those patients who have met in a mental hospital, so when they're trying to treat that person, the person might shout back to them, or sometimes even physically violently try to hit them, because they have no control of their mind when they are in those states. They don't know what they are doing and what they are, and so when they try to hurt and harm, whether it's the nurse, doctors, those who are trying to help, they understand the person's situation, the mental situation, the sickness. Because of that, they don't get upset and angry so easily. Even maybe sometime, maybe they might, sometime maybe it might trigger them a little bit, but most time and basically they know that is their mental state, that is their sickness, and they are acting that way because it is their sickness, they have no control. And because of that, they could have more patience. They have more patience. They do not approve that kind of behavior, where they're shouting back, trying to hit them, physically violent, but at the same time in their mind, still that behavior doesn't disturb them so much, and their mind is more patient, more understanding, more calm, and then trying to solve the problems without being so aggressive back. Instead, trying to help them how to calm down their mind, how to quiet and calm down their mind, how to make that person peaceful. Same way, if we can bring that example, and when someone is upset, angry, and deluded, and because of that kind of those different negative emotions, then they are responding in such a way, in an unhealthy, harmful way, to either ourselves, our friends, families, or someone else. And when they act that way, it is because they are totally overwhelmed by their inner disease of those delusions. It is absolutely, even though maybe physically, maybe they might not have that kind of same kind of biologically or physically, they might not have same sickness as what we call mental sickness or disease now. But internally, it is the same. Internally, it is a disease. It's those delusions. When those arises, it's like there's some virus arises and then you have no control. Same way, those delusion, internal virus of those delusion arises and then person becomes someone else. And they behave differently. And they behave differently in much more harmful way because they are being overtaken by the virus of the delusions. The virus of the delusions. So I think when we understand that, then again, we could be more patient with that person's, even though we might not agree with that person's behavior, but we could have a more understanding, more patience, and instead of being angry and upset, maybe having a wish to help them to be more calm, more peaceful, less deluded. And if there is anything we can do, if we can't do it, at least we have that wish, wanting to them seem, wishing, hoping and wishing them to, and praying for them to be more peaceful, more calm, less deluded, wishing them to be free from that sickness of the delusions, So I think dealing with the same issue that we spoke, that, but using that example and analyzing that example and reminding that example can be helpful. I think we all kind of can relate with if someone is mentally disturbed, that when they behave in certain way, certain harmful way, we seem to be more understanding and more patience. And so I think to be able to use that example and relate with that can be helpful and beneficial. In some of the more older classical teaching, they give the example of someone being possessed by another spirit, But, whether we use that example or use someone mentally ill, so it doesn't matter, but basically it is someone behave in certain harmful way because they are being controlled by something else, some other energy, whatever that is. So here the delusions, so. Another analysis that Shantideva used to reflect, contemplate, and meditate in dealing with the same situations, but trying to reflect, contemplate from slightly from different point of view, because sometimes when you use different point of view, different meditation, different reflections, different analysis, examination, sometimes one of them might not be so effective, but other one might be more effective for certain individuals. And even with one individual, sometimes one particular method is more effective at certain time than other times. depending on our mind and time and mood and so forth, So therefore, the more different way of method that we learn, different tools, meditation we learn, then we try this one. If it doesn't work, we try this one. If it doesn't work, we try this one. Or we try this is effective, but not very strongly effective. And then we try this one, and maybe this is more effective. So through that, then we have more tools to rely on instead of relying on just one tool, whether it works or not, whether it's effective or not for you. Another way of analyzing that he used is, if someone is behaving in such harmful way, why is that person behaving that way? Is it that person's nature to behave that way? If someone is too aggressive and arrogant, whatever, here, of course, we are talking about more kind of aggressive and through that kind of aggressions, harmings. And if that person's is that aggressions and that person's behavior of violent behavior is that person's nature, or it is not something person's nature, is something kind of temporary. Analyzing that way. If it is that person's nature, there's no reason to be upset and angry. That is who he is. That is what, that's who he is. There's nothing you can do about it. And that person can't change either, because it's that person's nature. The nature of fire is burning. You can't change the nature of the burning, burning nature of the fire. Is the way it is. You just have to accept. Fire is burning. So you just have to be more careful, not to be too near it, physically. Keep the distance, not mess up with the fire, because that is the nature of that person's. And, there's nothing he can do. There's nothing we can do it. That is how it is. It's nature. So there's no point of being upset and angry for the fire being the fire nature being burning. That is how it is. It's just its nature. On the same way, on other hand, if that is temporary, that person's such aggressions and aggressive behavior, the violent behavior temporary because of certain cause and conditions, then again, we shouldn't be so upset and angry because that person is behaving that, because generally that person is not so aggressive and violent, but because now, due to certain cause and conditions, that person is acting and behaving that way. And that person can be changed. That person can, when the cause and condition change, that person can become more kind person, more compassionate person. That person can change, And so therefore, the moment you see that person's, the possibility and that person transforming and changing into more kind, compassions, then, whatever our feeling about that person's started to change, starting to become more softening, instead of being more hardening. It started to be softening because you see the potential there for that person to change from aggressive to very kind compassion, because that person has the Buddha nature. And if that person's get the right cause and conditions around them, unfortunately, how we turn out, we are very much affected by our surrounding environment, our friends, our families, the information we rely on, the news we rely on. That change our view of the world, our view of the situations, you know. Even in now, you know, all the chaos that is happening here, a lot of people who are creating a lot of those chaos, their view of the world is very different than the view of our world. The view of their situation about this country is very different from our view. Their view of the elections is very different from our view, because they rely on certain information, certain news, other than the news and information we rely on. For whatever reasons, you know, maybe they grow up in a place, environment where they were exposed to those news from their young age, and and then that become your source of news, your informations. Or sometimes, you know, you just see one news that seems to be, we all have delusions, and we have certain delusions, and then you find a news that seems to fit your delusion, and then it grabs your attentions, you know, and then you are stuck into that without knowing you are stuck into it, you know. Sometimes we also become like that. We are sucked into that, and we are not even aware that we are sucked into it. And so then, you know, and their view, you know, a lot of those people's view of the world, the view of the situations could change, their behavior would change when they have surrounded, and when they are surrounded by certain different environment. You know, for some people it takes a lot of time, and some people they could see quickly, and they could change more quickly, and for some people it will take time, but basically, so the cautions that I think for me that helped me a lot with dealing with any situations, you know, you know. We had certain situation, you know, within the Tibetan community with His Holiness, you know, because of certain practice of Shukden, and then certain individual who are kind of negative and against His Holiness and all of that. And I think, you know, I always thought how fortunate I am that I was not being exposed to such environment where my teachers has different view, different belief. Because that influenced my view as well. If my teacher was the other side, who knows what I might be, how my mind might be influenced. It is easy for me to say now, I wouldn't be influenced, but you never know, you know. And so that kind of environment. So I sometimes I feel for other side, because their mind, their view and is different, because they have been influenced by certain surrounding environment, people around them, or there is their teacher, or there is their family, or there is their very close friends and all of that. And so, you know, and that. And I think it's the same thing in every situations, for a lot of terrorists, why they become terrorists? Because they are being surrounded by certain environment. They were not born to be a terrorist. When they are born and when they are young, they all has a, wanting to serve the community, wanting to help the community, wanting to help the world, peace, a lot of good thoughts. And then they turn out something else, opposite of what they used to think when they were young, what they wanted to do. And because of being influenced by situations, surrounding environment. And so we are so fortunate, grateful to have such environment surrounding, support, that we are not influenced to go in that negative way, in that aggressions and violence way. And when you understand that, you can feel, you don't agree with their behavior, but still they're aggressive, violent way, but you can understand, feel for that person's, So, so I think, so that was what I was saying, by seeing it is a temporary, and they are acting and behaving that way because of immediate kind of surrounding environment that they grow up in. But in deep inside that nature is compassion. They have the Buddha nature, and they have in the deep, on the fundamental level, they have the Buddha nature, they have the compassions. And if they get the right cause and conditions to water those compassions, they will become some of the most beautiful, more compassions in the world. And seeing that potentials, can be helpful in to have a better understanding and more patience and more compassions for the individuals, while we totally disagree and totally try to stop such harmful and aggressive behavior, whatever is needed to do that, So I think, okay, maybe we, so with that, then the next patience is, the patience with challenge, difficulties, sufferings, pain, which we always experience time to time, and we become very impatient with those, and if we don't deal with them, and if we become too impatient with whatever situation that we are going through, whatever challenge, whatever difficult, whatever problems, whatever pain, sufferings that we are going through, physical, emotional, whatever we are going through, if we don't deal with that impatience, then that impatience slowly lead us to become frustrated, more frustrated. And slowly that frustration will lead to anger and hatred, and so before it become that and explode, and then once that, then it will explode one day, instead. So before that, we need to take the actions to reduce and overcome that impatience, and one of the things, I think it seems like when we observe, why we become impatient, is sometimes there is expectations. I want things to go that way. I want things to not only go that way, so I have expectations. And sometimes not only that expectation want to go that certain way, I want to go quickly. I want to have that change in 1 week. So when it doesn't happen in 1 week, then I become impatient and frustrated. But if my expectations, okay, I will try my best to finish in 1 week, but I'm okay even if it takes me 1 month. When your mind is more open in that way, then even it doesn't happen in 1 week, even you try, then, because your expectation is not so strong in the sense that you wanted to have, your mind is okay. Even you would like to finish in a week, but still you are okay with a month. Your mind is in that way, more flexible in that way. So then you become less impatient, even when it's not finished in 1 week, and less frustrated. Same thing, changes. We want to see change in ourselves. We want to see change in the world. We want to see change in this country. A lot of changes. But if we have a high expectation, wanted to have all the changes immediately, then again, it leads to impatience, frustration, and anger. On the other hand, while we want to see changes, there are so many things need to be changed. And we want to see all those changes. But we know that it's going to take a long time. We have to try to bring those changes as soon as possible. The sooner we are able to bring changes, the better it is to reduce the pain and suffering. But at the same time, the reality is it will take a lot of time. It's going to take time. And so while we push for the change, at the same time, mentally being flexible, that is going to take a lot of effort from every side. And it's going to be long, short. It's going to take maybe many decades, if not many years, it's going to take decades. So I think when you have that kind of mentality and preparedness and flexibility, and that instead of having a so strong expectation, I want to see all the changes and immediately, I can't wait for decades. Then I think, then we become, even when the changes are happening, we are going in the right directions, the changes are happening, but still we become frustrated and angry, impatient, frustrated, and angry. Why? Because it's not that the direction, it is not that it is not going in the right direction, it's not that there is not having any positive changes, but it's too slow. Maybe we feel it is too slow, or we feel the change is not big enough, or not, and so therefore that leads to impatience, frustration, and anger. And so you see, it comes from that kind of expectations, and that's same with also our practice. Same with our practice. It helped me, for me, whether it's practice or whether it's even worldly things, of course I have a bigger goal, like the master kind of plan. But immediately, I don't think about the bigger goal in master. I just try to finish one thing ahead and see, if I can finish that, then I will see after that. And once I'm there, then I see, oh, I'm here. Maybe I can go the next step, little further. And then once you are there, then, oh, maybe I could go a little bit further. And slowly, slowly, it leads to where the goal you want to live, but you are not obsessed and thinking of the goal all the time, but taking one step ahead. That has helped me a lot, whether on worldly things, even like when we're doing some kind of hiking in Nepal, we're going to go to one of the most highest lake in the world, and we were struggling, we were having a problem with breathing and unable to, and so then of course we started to go there, but then at the end I said, I don't have to be on the top, but I just want to go a little further. And once I'm there, and then you say, oh, I've come a little bit. Maybe I could just go a little bit further and see how I feel it. And slowly, slowly, we are on the top, But even though I had the intention, the goal to reach there, but once I understood that well, then I wasn't pushing to really reach there, but just taking it step by step. If I can move a little further, and I will see how it is there. And so then I don't have to, even I cannot go on the top, I don't have to beat myself feeling, oh, I failed. And worthless, and all of that, and that kind of approach is that I take. Same with my practice, if I have certain numbers of doing practice, even though my goal, I would like to do that, but I would say, even I can do just 1/10 of that number, I will be quite happy. And once I finish 1/10, then I feel like, oh, maybe I could do another 10 or 1/10 of that, and 2. And then, but in my mind, I already kind of relaxed myself, saying, if I could reach that number, that's great. If I can't reach, even I could reach 1/10 of that, 2/10 of that, 3/10, I would be happy, because it's better than nothing. It is progress. It is and so then that helped me to be less harsh on yourself and less frustrated and all of that, so I think expectations really kind of is one of the cause contributions to our impatience and frustrations and so forth. So I think lowering that kind of too high expectations while trying our best, but not having too, so that can help us to be more relaxed and more patient and less impatient. And then, Shantideva explains, and many others teachings, one way is, by seeing the benefit in the positive side and the benefit of that situation, whatever is challenging, whatever is difficult, whatever is problematic at the moment. to be able to learn to see positive of that. Because if you see something positive in that, then you have less stronger aversion to that. And the more you have less stronger aversion to that, then you have less resistance when you are encountering and when you are facing that. And then it doesn't become so, disturbing. And it is something when we dislike so much and we have strong aversions, and when we cannot free ourselves from that, something which you dislike so much, something that you have strong aversions, then that upset our mind, disturb our mind more. If you think, I don't mind whether it's come or not, I don't mind either this one or that one, then you have less dislike and less aversions, and if it comes, you can deal with it with much more easiness, without your mind being so disturbed, agitated. So to be able to see that is, to be able to look and to be able to see is helpful tools to let go of the strong dislike and aversions, and thereby when we do encounter that, then we are less disturbed. Our mind is less disturbed, and therefore, when our mind is less disturbed, then we are not impatient, but we are more patient. And everything, it depends on from what kind of glass you are looking. If I'm wearing a red color glass, then I see things differently. If I'm wearing a plain, I see things differently. If I'm wearing a blue color glass, I see things differently due to that glass. And so same thing, everything's with what kind of mind we look at that, we see that way. And so therefore, if we look from certain perspective, in certain wisdom, with certain way, you can always find something positive, even in the most negative. You can see certain positiveness, goodness in everything. And if you are able to see that goodness and that positiveness, then, we wouldn't be so disturbed as we are at the moment. And so there are many different ways of doing that, and some of the things that Shantideva explained is, through the karma point of view, by experiencing whatever challenge, difficult that we are clearing, purifying cause and condition of much more bigger problem if we have not cleared that now. And it is like that, for example, even in this situation now, what just happened recently in this country, in DC, because of that painful, difficult situations, now I think there is more awareness, and as a country, there's more alert, more awareness, and they will pay more attention to this kind of things in the futures, And so in a way, maybe it was bad, but maybe there is a potential for this to become much more worse. And because of that small bad, now I think maybe from the law point of view, they pay more attention so that it doesn't happen in the futures. As a citizen, more people are more aware that there could be a danger, not from outside, from inside. And so therefore there's more awareness and more, so therefore, but with that more awareness, more attention, there's possible to stop it from becoming a huge. And so that is, it is a very sad and painful, but at the same time, in a way, it is like a wake of the country. And so many people's perspective might have changed. Even not everyone has changed, but many people's perspective has changed in so many different ways before what happens and after that. And so, that is in that side. Then if you only look at what really happened, then it is very disturbing and upsetting and that. But if you look things in that way, then you can see some positive coming out of this. In the long term, bigger pictures, is better. And so same things, in our life. So in that way, maybe this country has purified and cleared a lot of negative karma that could have produced 10 times, 100 times more dangerous and more harmful than what happens, And so, and it's there is always how you look at it. I feel with all these 4 years and everything that has happened, even though there is a lot of things that damage is done, and but also it just has a lot of things that people have taken granted before. Now we know we can't take it granted. And there's no more awareness that we have to build more stronger in terms of law, in terms of even in constitutions, so that because there is possible in the future, we could even have a much more worse leaders. So how can we stop such leaders? So all the faults that we see now, that can be kind of check it, so it doesn't happen. It doesn't repeat again in the futures. So it give the country the opportunity to do that, from totally collapsing the democracy, because this time it didn't collapse totally, even though there is a lot of challenges. But there is a danger of collapsing totally and becoming like some of other countries. So it exposed some of the things that were where there is a shortcoming, weakness, and so there is now opportunity to fix those things, and so that it doesn't happen. So in a way, it and also for me, also it's really nice to see, there was a lot of fear how the Supreme Court, a lot of the court will respond, and the responses were really, even though those judges are appointed by himself and some conservative in terms of their view, political view, but they stand up and behold the democracy and that. And so again, there is good side, that too, to see that encouraging that. So, I think we have to look both the shortcoming, bad side, what happens, also the good side, and so that our mind is more balanced. Otherwise, we can become very negative, hopeless, depressed. I'm bringing this example because we are dealing with that, but that example can be applied in our individual life and in a bigger, our individual pain, suffering, difficulties, and also on more collective pain and sufferings, So by looking at that, by going through some discomfort, some pain, some suffering, we are fixing, purifying, cleaning, and fixing that could lead to a much more bigger problem and sufferings. When you see that, then you think, well, it's something that painful, but at the same time is worthwhile to fix the bigger pictures. So then you see something positive coming out of that, something benefit coming out of that, something positive coming out of that. Then then your mind is not as disturbed. If you can't see any positive coming out of that, then your mind will be more disturbed, more agitated, more upset. But if you see, even though it's painful, but there's something good thing coming out of that, then it can keep your mind more positive and less disturbed. So that is one way of doing, of way of thinking. And I think, it is always, and this is something that we need to train our mind to do that. It is all training, and I see many of the teachers, and His Holiness is a really good example of that, how he is able to see something positive in every tragedy, every difficulties. And that, I think that comes through training. After training your mind to do that, at the very beginning, it doesn't come naturally, But you started to train all the time, trying to look something positive in everything that happens in our life, small challenges, problems, difficulties. And then we started to see something benefit, something positive in that. And slowly, your mind get into that kind of pattern way of thinking, analyzing, and then even in those most difficult, most tragedy, big problem, you are able to see something positive in that. In that way, that is how you keep your mind from becoming insane and keep your mind sane. And that is how you are able to keep your mind positive, hopeful. And that is what I see His Holiness, Dalai Lama, in every tragedy, his mind is always able to see, and that comes through training, and I think we also have to do that, we have to learn to do that, and then then we don't lose our mind and become insane, so that we can keep our mind calm, peaceful, hopeful, positive, despite all the pain and sufferings and the problems. And from the spiritual point of view, as Chandeva explains, those individuals who create problems and those problematic, challenging situations are the best teachers. For a true sincerity practitioner, they are the true teachers. Your challenges, your difficulties, your pain are your best teachers in our life. Sometimes it is hard to feel that when you are going through the problem itself. But after having gone through the problem, and when look back, then we know those have been good teachings. And I see that, some of the challenges, difficult that I went through when I was young, I think those have made me more stronger. Those experience has made me more stronger to be able to deal with some of the discomforts now. I have more, I can say I have more patience to deal with some of the discomfort. And that comes because, that wasn't because I was training myself to do that, but those are part of your life. It comes when you were young, you didn't have much, hardly anything, whether in the monastery or outside or even when in the home. And so you grew up in a kind of tough environment. And so you learn to do that. And you just have to deal with that reality. And so now, those have become, because sometimes when I look, and then I say, oh, this is nothing than what I have already gone through. This discomfort is nothing than the discomfort that I went before, and I was able to overcome that. So I should be able to overcome this. It's not a big problem. And so that gave me kind of hope to overcome the discomfort, because I've done that before, even more than that, so that there is the hope. And as long as you see, it's not a big deal. And that comes. And so, that is something that we learn from experience. So that is why, those situations are the greatest teachers. And especially someone who is trying to follow the bodhisattva path. For someone who is trying to follow the bodhisattva path, who is trying to develop unconditional true love, compassion, bodhicitta mind towards all sentient beings, then it becomes even more important, because to be able to do that, we need to have we need to perfect the practice of patience. And to be able to perfect the practice of patience, we need the opportunity to practice the patience. And to get the opportunity to practice the patience, then those individuals in those situations give us the opportunity to. If you never get that opportunity, because if there's no one who is making you, who is trying to create some kind of problem to you, if there's no situation, challenging, difficult situations, then we have no opportunity to practice patience. And if we don't practice, there's no opportunity to perfect it. We can only perfect it by practicing it. And we can only practice only when there's opportunity. If everyone is kind, everything is going well, then we don't need to practice, because we never get opportunity. And if we never get opportunity, we never perfect it. And so to be able to perfect and complete the practice of patience, which is crucial to develop true love, compassion, and bodhicitta towards all sentient beings, and all the time. So from that point of view, then, as Shantideva said, as all the Lojong says, that individual in those situations are the best teachers, the best teachers. I think theoretically, we do understand a little bit as we are discussing. Of course, it's more difficult when you are in situation itself. If someone says, this is the best teaching, we might hit them back. What about this? This is your best teaching. This is your best teacher. I'm your best teacher, and you slap them and tell them, this is your best teacher. How about that? You said this is best teacher for me, I will slap you, and now see, I am your best teacher. How about that? Can you accept that? Can you take that? If you cannot accept that, you cannot take that. I cannot accept it, I cannot take that. When we are in a situation, it is probably we feel that way, you know. When someone says that, at the moment, I think when you are not in the situation, when you are more, our mind is more calm, peaceful, we can really see it is true. It is true. But we are unable to deal with that when we are in a situation because, you know, we haven't trained enough. We haven't trained enough. And if we start training with small, and starting to feel with small challenges, small those things, they are teachers. And they are the best teachers. And slowly, we might be able to accept even the bigger challenges. And slowly, with that training, even someone try to kill you, still you can feel they are the best teacher. But we will not be able to reach there immediately unless we start with very small things. We have to learn, train with small things, easy small things, with small challenges, small discomfort, with small challenges, small problems. To reach to that point, you know. So that is the patience in dealing with the difficulties, and then the patience with the practice, you know. So when we are trying to engage in any virtuous practice, any kind of virtuous practice, you know, whatever different form of virtuous practice, different aspect of the form, and we need the patience, you know. And when we engage into something, any positive, virtuous practice, we are bound to encounter some challenges, some obstacles, time to time, external, internal challenges. And when those challenges comes, we have to be ready and expect those challenges. And then with that, we try to have the patience to overcome them and continue to practice without giving up, you know. So with that, I think we complete the third one, the patience. I guess maybe I spent quite a bit of time on that here. I guess maybe that is maybe what is required in present situations with the default. That maybe, hopefully, maybe that will give some window to think about if something's bothering us with what is happening in this country, in these situations, and that could bother our mind a lot, you know, and that could lead to a lot of different emotions arising, you know. And so maybe having discussed that here and hearing that, maybe hopefully it give us some space, window to reflect, contemplate, and hopefully maybe we might be able to deal with that emotionally, maybe a little bit more positive, more healthy. So yeah. So then fourth is the practice of perseverance, the perfection of perseverance. Okay. Of course, normally perseverance is an effort, you know. So here, normal perseverance, we can have a perseverance or effort towards worldly things, you know, in terms of object, you know, by very ordinary worldly things, you know. someone might have a lot of perseverance in terms of, engaging in different worldly things, or not all worldly. Sometimes we can have even perseverance, even in engaging in non-virtuous, negative things as well. But when we talk about perseverance as the practice of bodhisattvas, the fourth one, the perfection of perseverance, the practice of perfection of perseverance, here the object of such perseverance has to be virtues. Okay? The object has to be virtues. It's not something non-virtuous. If you have perseverance towards non-virtues, then it's not this perseverance. That we are not. It can't be the perseverance of the among the six perfections. Not only that, the object, if it is neutral, even though it is not non-virtuous, but it is neutral, even that is, if perseverance towards that, then it is also not the perseverance we are talking about here. So the object of this perseverance has to be virtuous in terms of the objects, and in terms of the aspect of the practice, of course, sometimes we can have perseverance and effort in our virtues, but we might not have the joyfulness, And I think a lot of our practice are like that, We are just dragging. Because we need to practice, so we do it, not because we enjoy it, because there is joyfulness in practice, as I discussed before, So in this perseverance, when you talk about this fourth perseverance of the Bodhisattva path, there is a joyfulness in the practice. There is joyfulness in the practice of the virtues, that whatever virtues it is. So that is the important factors. So to differentiate this practice, the perseverance, the fourth perfections, where what the object has to be virtuous, as well as they need to have joyfulness in the practice. So that is why this one comes even later than patience. In terms of practice, yesterday we were talking about how each earlier practice is supposed to be more easier and following practice are more difficult. And if it isn't just the joyfulness and if it isn't the virtues, just the perseverance, it doesn't sound like it's more difficult than patience, isn't it? Patience seems to be much more difficult, or even moral discipline seems to be much difficult. But when we talk about having the joyfulness, delightfulness in our virtues, it's not so easy. Mm-hmm. So that is the main, again, as with all other practice, is the mental state, the joyfulness in engaging in the virtues is the main. When we talk about perseverance here, that is the main one. And then out with that joyfulness in virtues, then of course engaging into the practice, physically, verbally, mentally, out of that joyfulness, then in that practice, in that virtues. So then that is the perseverance that we're talking about here. And in terms of the perseverance, again, Shantideva and many other lamrims, it talk about, again, three types of perseverance, I don't know, maybe, yeah. Maybe before I go to that, the subdivision, a different type of the perseverance, maybe we can talk a little bit about. So in order to have this perseverance in the virtues, so then Shantideva explained we need to overcome the obstacles, and the main obstacle to develop this perseverance is the laziness. And when we talk about laziness, then there are two types of laziness. I think one laziness is we don't have the inspirations, or we don't have the energy or inspiration to engage in the virtues or the practice, because we don't have confidence in ourselves, confidence in practice itself. That is one of the kind of what keep us away from practicing and having the inspirations, and being lazy and not really engaged in the practice is sometimes we don't have a strong confidence in our practice and ourselves. That is one of the reasons. That is one of the laziness. Another laziness is, we get too distracted to other things. And then we don't have the energy to the virtues. All the energy that we spend on other things, non-virtues, or even is non-virtues, worldly things. So our time, it spends so much, our energy, physical and mental energy spends so much on other not so meaningful things, worldly things, then we don't have any much energy, physically, mentally, sometimes both. Sometimes you have some physical energy, but you don't have mental energy. Sometimes you have some mental energy, but you don't have physical energy. And sometimes you don't have both energy. And so then that kind of stop us from engaging in the virtues, because we don't have the energy of that. And that makes us lazy, because we don't have that energy. That, so that is one thing. And then the other one is, even though we might have, some kind of, belief or confidence in our practice and ourselves, and even though, but we still kind of, and even though maybe we might not be too overtly distracted by other things, but still we keep on postponing. We never start, and being lazy, thinking, I can start next month, next week, tomorrow. Maybe I can start when the weather gets a little bit more sunny, more warm. It's too cold now, maybe it's better to be by the fire. Maybe when things, when it's more warm, and then when it's warm, maybe you think, oh, it's very warm, nice sunny day, I need to be outside. I need to go and hike, which I do, and maybe I would practice when the weather is not good, so then I have more time. I don't have to be out, and I can be inside, and we keep on that. It's interesting how our mind, when it's snowing, raining, oh, I don't feel like going to teachings. I don't feel like doing practice, it's raining, it's snowing, and then when it's warm and sunny, oh, I don't want to go to teaching and practice. I want to go somewhere out, enjoy, be in the nature and this and that. And so we never find a time to practice, basically we keep on postponing, thinking we will get the time tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or after 10 years or after 15 years, after you retire, we take, I can practice when I'm retired. I will have plenty of time. Once you are retired, no, you become more busy than before. I've seen many people like that. They're looking forward to retire so they can study and practice more. After their retirement, they become even more busy. More busy than when they're actually working, when they had a really job. So that can be just an excuse. So that is postponing, that kind of laziness. So these three kind of laziness. So because of that, keep on postponing. So you never kind of engage. You never engage in the practice. And so we need to overcome those three kind of laziness. And, so, to overcome the laziness of postponing and the laziness of being distracted on, non-virtues or worthy things, then meditating on dead impermanent in general, and dead impermanent can be helpful. Especially the meditation on uncertainty of the time of the death. That death could come anytime. It might not wait for me to retire. It might not wait for me to start my practice after 20 years or after 10 years. It might not wait for me to 1 year. It might not wait for 1 week, 1 month, 1 week. It could come anytime. If it might come tomorrow, if it comes tomorrow, what is going to be helpful, meaningful? Is more meaningful for me today to do some practice, or to engage in something meaningless? Definitely, if I'm aware, if I'm quite confident I'm going to die tomorrow and I know a little bit of Dharma, I would like to spend more time on practicing Dharma than trying to spend time on meaningless things. So then, then you wouldn't postpone so much. You will try to practice as much as possible in whatever time you have. You will be less distracted to a lot of meaningless things. And so therefore, that that can help us to overcome some of the two of the laziness, that meditations. And of course, meditating on emptiness, can be helpful. And then, in terms of the overcoming the not having confidence in the practice itself or yourself, then meditating on Buddha nature, that we all have Buddha nature and we can all become enlightenment. So if we can become enlightenment, that means we can actualize unconditional, limitless love, compassion, wisdom, all of that. So compared to all of that, this practice is small, nothing. So I should be able to do that. I should be able to, So through that, then we kind of, through that kind of meditation, reflection, contemplation, we try to build up our self-competence in our practice, and ourselves towards the practice. And when we have that, then you wouldn't think, then you wouldn't be overcome by one of those lessons where I think, oh, this is something I can't do. It's not possible for me. It's something impossible for me. This is something beyond my ability or my practice. So thereby you give up and you don't really try. And so that is the other obstacles in laziness. And so when we come back, I will kind of, so these are the obstacles, the laziness that we need to overcome in order to engage into the practice, and through that develop the perseverance. So then we talk a little bit later. Any questions from this morning? Any questions, any comments from this morning?
Geshe, this is Heather.
Yes, please.
I really want to thank you for your thoughts about patience in the context of what we're going through as a country. It led me to think a lot, and it makes me think about, I have two little nephews that I love as much as I love anything in this world. I love my nephews, and I love them equally. And when one of the older one hits the younger one, it's really important for me to say, that's not okay. And
Yes.
It's important to say it's not okay, because I don't want the one who hit to think it's okay, but it's equally important that the one who was hit know that I also don't think it's okay that you were hit. And so I think about that when I think about how I want to use my speech. It could make me cry, but in the context of what's happening, the people that I love that are Black, that are the ones who are being hurt, I want my speech to be clear that it's not okay with me that happens. And so it's just as important to me that my speech is saying, I stand up for you, as it is that I'm saying, that this person is wrong. And so, it's a very beautiful way that you helped me to kind of think about that. It's dishonest to say that I love both groups equally. I don't. I can try, but it's a way to maybe come from a more compassionate place, if that makes sense.
Yes. As long as even though we cannot have equally at this point, of course, to reach that point, it requires a lot of practice, a lot of time, and it won't be easy for us, But even just to have some understanding, better understanding of them, and even having some, even a little bit of compassion, a little bit of feeling for them, while we totally disagree their behavior and actions. And I think your example is really good, because, with your nephew things, you still love the older one who's hitting, but you don't agree with that, and it's harmful for both of them, and so therefore you make it clear that that is not okay. But at the same time, in terms of feeling, you still love your nephew. And so if you can do that, that means we have the potential to do that with others too. It's not your nephew, but still, same way, we don't agree with that behavior, and we try to stand up for such behavior and stop such behavior. But at the same time, you can feel compassion. And even we cannot feel compassion equally, there is a potential to feel compassion. And very clearly it shows it's possible, just like you had been able to do with your two nephews. Even though one of them is behaving in that way, but still you can understand and feel compassion for that. And so it's good to know that we have the potential to able to do that. And it is possible to know that it is possible to have both of them, to stand up at the same time to have compassion, feeling. So because a lot of time we feel it's not possible to have both, you know. But now you're using your own example that makes it is possible. You have been able to do that. And so therefore it's just extending that further. Yeah. Okay, so we'll have a lunch break. Otherwise, if you don't have lunch, then you become impatient and frustrated. Sometimes some people have, when they don't get the food at the right time, then you started to become a little bit impatient and a little bit frustrated. And also it also happens to me sometimes, okay? Especially when you are traveling, in India, and you have been traveling, is tiring traveling, and then you are supposed to get lunch at 12, and you are still in 2, 3, and you are not getting lunch, and then you started to become a little bit grumpy, Okay, see you later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll come back at 1 o'clock.